The concept of an archetype, ʻārkɪtaɪp, is found in areas relating to behavior, modern psychological theory, and literary analysis. An archetype can be a statement, pattern of behavior, or prototype which other statements, patterns of behavior, and objects copy or emulate. A Platonic philosophical idea referring to pure forms which embody the fundamental characteristics of a thing. A collectively inherited unconscious idea, pattern of thought, image, etc., that is universally present in individual psyches, as in Jungian psychology, or a constantly recurring symbol or motif in literature, painting, or mythology. In various seemingly unrelated cases in classic storytelling, media, etc., characters or ideas sharing similar traits can be found. In the first sense, many more informal terms are frequently used instead, such as standard example or basic example, and the longer form, archetypal example, is also found. In mathematics, an archetype is often called a canonical example. Etymology. The word archetype, original pattern from which copies are made, first entered into English usage in the 1540s and derives from the Latin noun archetypum, Latinization of the Greek noun rho chi epsilon tau epsilon pi omicron nu, whose adjective form is rho chi epsilon tau epsilon pi omicron sigma, which means first molded, which is a compound of rho chi eta beginning, origin, and tau epsilon pi omicron sigma typus, which can mean, amongst other things, pattern, model, or type, function. Usage of archetype in a specific piece of write-up or concept has holistic approach, which further makes it win universal acceptance. Readers get to relate, identify with the characters and situation, both socially and culturally. By deploying common archetype contextually, a writer aims to impart realism to his work. Going by many literary critics, archetypes have a standard and recurring depiction in a particular human culture or the whole human race that ultimately lays concrete pillars by shaping the whole structure in a literary work. Plato. The origins of the archetypal hypothesis date back as far as Plato. Plato's ideas were pure mental forms that were imprinted in the soul before it was born into the world. They were collective in the sense that they embodied the fundamental characteristics of a thing rather than its specific peculiarities. In the 17th century, Sir Thomas Browne and Francis Bacon both employ the word archetype in their writings. Browne in The Garden of Cyrus attempted to depict archetypes in his usage of symbolic proper names, Jungian archetypes. The concept of psychological archetypes was advanced by the Swiss psychiatrist Carl Jung, 1919. In Jung's psychological framework, archetypes are innate, universal prototypes for ideas and may be used to interpret observations, a group of memories and interpretations associated with an archetype as a complex. Jung treated the archetypes as psychological organs, analogous to physical ones in that both are morphological constructs that arose through evolution. At the same time, it has also been observed that evolution can itself be considered an archetypal construct. Jung states in Part 1 of Man and His Symbols that, "My views about the archaic remnants, which I call archetypes or primordial images, have been constantly criticized by people who lack a sufficient knowledge of the psychology of dreams and of mythology." The term archetype is often misunderstood as meaning certain definite mythological images or motifs, but these are nothing more than conscious representations. Such variable representations cannot be inherited. The archetype has a tendency to form such representations of a motif, representations that can vary a great deal in detail without losing their basic pattern. Archetypal literary criticism. Archetypal literary criticism argues that archetypes determine the form and function of literary works and that a text's meaning is shaped by cultural and psychological myths. Archetypes are the unknowable basic forms personified or made concrete by recurring images, symbols, or patterns, and that have all been laden with meaning prior to their inclusion in any particular work. This archetype may create a shared imaginary which is defined by many stereotypes that have not separated themselves from the traditional, biological, religious and mythical framework.